Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. or slightly thereafter, and that means it is time for Women in Business. You may notice I sound a little nasal today and my nose looks a little weird. That's because one side of one nostril is packed right now because I've had a nosebleed that decided it didn't want to stop. So I packed it up so I could come here and talk to you, and we're going to hope that it will hold and everything will be good. So I apologize for looking a little odd today. I apologize for sounding a little nasal, but sometimes when you're dealing with chronic illness, that's what you have to do. So that's what I'm doing. And yes, for those of you who are on blood thinners, I'm sure you're feeling my pain. Nosebleeds stink. But that is not what we're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about how to fail at social media. And I'm sure a lot of people are going, well, why do I want to know how to fail at social media? And obviously, you don't want to know how to fail at social media. You want to know how to succeed. But I figure if I'm talking about failing, that'll give you the things not to do. And then you can do the things you should do, which will help you succeed. Now, this is a presentation that I did, so many years ago. I think the first time I did this was about 6 years ago. So these slides are pretty basic, but I think they'll get across what I want to tell you. And I'm hoping this is all going to go well. And I'm looking at my nose and going, geez, I look like I got punched in the nose, which I think is funny, but it is what it is and what you're going to do. So, at any rate, here we go. And I'm going to because these slides are pretty basic, so I'm going to put them in this configuration. If you feel like you really can't read them and you want them to be bigger, let me know and I'll switch to another presentation that makes the slides bigger. So if that's what you want, let me know. And probably I should do the bigger slides today because then we wouldn't see my nose. That's actually not a bad idea. This is a much better plan. Let's do it this way. So, in any case, how to fail at social media. Let's get started. So, some common mistakes to avoid. The first one is being all about sales, and you'll see a lot of people who think that their social media feeds should just be buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. That's all it should be. And all their posts are the same picture of the same product, whatever it is, and a message about we have low prices or here's where you can buy or whatever it is. And that's all they ever say. And the problem with that is that you end up, first of all, boring the heck out of people. And it's the analogy I always give is suppose that you went to a car lot and you wanted to buy a car, and all the people who sell cars in that lot were standing up on top of the cars with bullhorns screaming at you about why you should buy that particular car. Would you want to buy that particular car? I don't think so. And it's the same thing with if all you're ever talking about on your social media is selling, people are going to get bored with it and they're going to just go away. Another thing that people, when they're starting out, often think is that they need to be posting all the time. They need to be saying something all the time. And what happens is that they put up anything because they want to keep posting and posting and posting because the theory is new content is going to pull everybody in. Now, that's not entirely wrong. New content will keep people coming back, but it has to be good, relevant content. And if you're just posting things for the sake of posting, then you're just going to, again, bore people and turn them off, and they'll go look for somebody else who has a more cohesive, curated feed, as they should. The tumble and tumbleweed thing, that is the people who think that social media success should happen in 2 days, 3 days max. So they get on a new site and they set up a profile and they don't attract attention immediately and they don't get 500 followers immediately. And so they assume that this platform doesn't work. So they move on to the next platform and then they move on to the next platform. And what ends up happening is they never stay anywhere long enough to build any kind of following because nobody ever gets to know them, because nobody ever can, because they're never there long enough. So don't be a tumble and tumbleweed. Pick your platform, do your research, know that's the platform you're supposed to be on, and just assume that it's going to take you probably minimum 6 months to build a following that you're going to think is worth it. And just be okay with that and accept it. Because if you're always switching platforms because you think you'll find the right one that's magically going to become amazing in like 3 days, you're not going to do it. It's not going to happen, and all that is going to happen is you're going to end up with a lot of profiles that have nothing happening on them. And that's really not useful. A little narcissism can hurt, and narcissism is harder to say than you would think. And this means if everything is all about you, and for a lot of people on social media, they think, well, it's my profile, it should be all about me. And they never share anything from anybody else. They never comment on anybody else's stuff. They never do anything that connects them to anybody else. If it's all about you all the time and you're never connecting with anybody else, you're never commenting on anybody else's posts, you're never sharing anybody else's stuff, you're never boosting anybody else's things, then why should anybody boost yours? It's not going to be worth it. And then finally, the world is my friend. And this is the one where, now granted, I will say my stance on this has changed a little bit. When I started, I was very much of the strategic friending theory, which is everybody that you friend or follow or become a fan of or like their page or whatever it is should be somebody that's going to advance the goals of your business if you're doing this for business purposes, or if you're doing this to promote craft fairs or whatever it is. I've kind of moved away from that a little bit because there is some value to having a bigger fan or follower count, especially since some of the social media platforms are now considering how many followers or fans you have when they decide where you go in the algorithm and what your social capital is. So widen your friend pool maybe a little more than I once would have said, but I'm sorry, if you run a business and you're asking your mom and your dad and your Uncle Jim to follow you, if they're not customers of yours, that's not useful. You still want to make sure that the majority of people following you are people who want what you have to sell, who are interested in what you have to say, who can benefit in some way from what you're offering, because otherwise you just have a pile of people that aren't going to do anything for you or with you or about you. And that doesn't really make any sense. So, what's your goal? This is another way that people fail, especially when they're using social media for business. Your goal could be getting sales. Your goal could be networking. Your goal could be making connections. Your goal could be getting your name known. Your goal could be learning new things. There could be a lot of goals, but know why you're on social media. And don't just be on social media because everybody says you should be on social media. That's not helpful. That doesn't get you anywhere. Know why you're there, because if you know why you're there, then the choices you make will be better choices, and the posts you post will be better posts. So that's the kind of thing that you need to think about. And a lot of people, if you ask them why they're on social media, they'll say, well, I thought everybody had to be on social media, or these days everybody has to be on social media. That's not a good enough reason. Know why you're there. Know what you want to get out of it, for a lot of reasons, but two of the main ones. Knowing why you're there is going to dictate what kind of content you post and how you interact with people. And it's also the way to know if it's working or not. If you don't know what you want to get out of it, then the results that you get don't matter. But if you're going to it for a specific purpose, then you can look at the results you're getting and say, okay, am I meeting my purpose or not? And it makes all the difference, because if you're not meeting your purpose, then maybe that's not the right platform, or maybe the approach you're taking is not the right approach. But if you don't know what you're trying to get, then you can't know if you've gotten it. And that seems like a very basic piece of logic, but it's surprising how many people don't necessarily understand that. So, some common social media goals: sales, obviously, getting people to notice you, getting people to know your shop name and know who you are and know what you do, building trust. That's a big one, and it's one that people often neglect. Social media is a great way to allow people to understand who you are, what you value, what your corporate values are, and it's a way to build trust by just showing that you show up consistently, that you deal with problems transparently, that you have good corporate values, whatever those values are. And a lot of people don't really get that point either, that if you're on social media, one of the ways you can use it best is to build trust. So that's something you really need to pay attention to. And then the last one is education. And social media is a great way to educate your customers about what you do, about the equipment you have, about what you've learned, about how hard you're working to create the best atmosphere and opportunity for your customers, how you're working to bring them new services, the pitfalls or the problems of the various decoration techniques you use, and why certain things don't work with certain decoration techniques, any of that. Or you can do what I do, which is educate the decorators in the industry about various things. And that's another way that you can actually make quite an impact on social media, which is just sharing what you know. So, and like I said, these are some common goals. They're certainly not the only ones, but they're probably some of the most common, which would be to make sales, to get the word out about yourself, to do publicity, basically, to build trust, and to educate people. And all of those, and you can have more than one of those goals at the same time. It doesn't have to be all, I'm going to focus solely on sales, or I'm going to focus solely on building trust. You can do all of those things simultaneously. Just make sure you don't have so many goals that you're splitting your focus so much that you're never going to get anywhere, because that don't help. So goals are met if you plan. And this is, again, something that people kind of go into social media a lot of times just thinking, I'm supposed to be here and I'll just post some stuff and that's going to work. And they don't think about the fact that you need to know what you want, number one, and you need to know how you're going to get it. And that means, and I'm not saying, I mean, there are companies, I know some of them that have, months long elaborate marketing calendars and social media calendars and all that stuff. And that's great if that's how you want to do it. Personally, I've tried that a couple times. For me, it's just cumbersome. And I tend to be a little more off the cuff kind of thing. But I know what I want to do. I know what the goal is. So, first of all, when you set a goal, you have to realize that it's not going to happen tomorrow. So you have to persevere. And that means you have to post when it feels like nobody in the world is paying attention to you. You have to talk back to people when it seems like they will never notice that you're talking to them. You have to do all these things, because if you don't, you're never going to get anywhere. Like I said, and I have said this in numerous other videos, I'm sure that I will say this again today. Social media is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You need to be in it for the long haul. Building an audience takes time. So you have to give that time to your audience, to let them find you, to let them realize you're someone they want to pay attention to, and to let them figure out that you're putting out good content and they should stay and listen to you. Attend to stats and analytics. You should always have business pages. I think I talk about that a little later in this slide deck. But if you have a business, even if it's just a small business and even if you're just starting out your business, get business pages because they have better stats and better analytics. They'll show you more things about who's seeing your posts, about when your posts are getting viewed the most, about what posts get the best reaction, about a lot of things that you won't get with personal profiles or pages. So definitely have business pages. And also attend to what your audience is telling you. If you do social media well, your audience will talk to you. And like I said, that may take some time, but eventually they will. And when they start talking to you, for God's sakes, listen. There is one of my huge pet peeves, I will say, is people who have a page or a group that is just hopping and there's people talking all the time. And the person who owns the page or the group is not talking back. And so they're missing this golden opportunity to interact with people who are actually interested in them, which is to me a huge waste and kind of dumb. But that's me. And I understand that other people do it differently. But it is something to think about. And obviously, like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You need to be planning long term in terms of and again, I know I just said I don't think you need a month-long elaborate social media calendar, but I think you should have some sense of these are the things I want to hit this month, or these are the sales I want to have, or whatever it is. And then also think out a little bit, okay, so in 6 months, it'll be 3 months before Christmas or whatever it is. So do I want to start posting my Christmas stuff then? Notice. Noticing means paying attention. What are your competitors saying? What are people saying to their friends? What are people saying on their own profiles? What are people in groups saying to each other? Pay attention and watch what's happening, because all these things give you nuggets of information that you can use to build a successful social media platform. But it takes time and it takes effort. And anybody who thinks they're just going to slap up a couple of posts and get what they want to get out of social media is dreaming. I'm sorry, but they are. So, and this is another thing, test and try. When you read some of the experts, they will tell you there's a silver bullet. You have to be on this platform. You have to use this thing. You have to promote at this time. And the problem with that is that there is no silver bullet. It's different for everybody. And the only way to know what works for you and your audience is to try things yourself. Try different kinds of posts. Try video. Try just picture posts. Try posts that have a lot of words. Try posts that have just a few words. Try posts with hashtags. Do any number of different things. Try videos where you're in them. Try videos where you're not in them. Try equipment videos. Try all these things. And then, like I was saying in the previous slide, pay attention. Notice which things get the most likes, the most comments. What do people refer to? What do people share? All that kind of stuff. And view all your accounts as an experiment. Don't assume because something works on one platform, it's going to work on another, because all the platforms are different. So what works on Pinterest isn't necessarily going to work on Facebook, isn't necessarily going to work on Instagram, isn't necessarily going to work on TikTok. Now that should be obvious, but it isn't to some people. And there are people who will post the exact same post across all the platforms, which I gotta say totally drives me insane, because the platforms are different. The posts that will be most effective are the posts that are tailored to the particular platform that they're on. Don't post the same thing. You can post the same concept. You can use the same picture, but tailor it to the platform on which it appears, because each platform has different requirements. And this is a mistake I see all the time. It has to do somewhat with automation. It has to do somewhat with, I don't have time to make 4 separate posts, which, I mean, honestly, if you can make 1 post, you can make 4 posts. It's not really that hard. But For the sake of argument, we'll say, okay, it's too time consuming. So view each account as an experiment. Take each account individually. Know what the requirements are for each platform. Excuse me. And I'm just a mess today, guys. You don't even want to know. View each account as an experiment and just learn from it, because that's the important thing. All right. So going viral is not as much the holy grail as it used to be. When I did these slides originally, which I think was back in 2016, going viral was like, ooh, that was the ultimate goal that everybody should be trying for. The problem is a lot of people tried to be controversial or, extra something so they would go viral. You can't force it. The best viral moments are the stuff that somebody just puts up and everybody finds it affecting or emotional or something and decides that they really want to share it. So if it's good content that really has meaning, you'll probably go viral without any effort. If you're trying to force it, you probably won't, because people are savvy enough now and have been around social media long enough that they get when someone's trying to make something go viral. And keep in mind also that trying to go viral can backfire. If you're trying to be controversial, then it can backfire in your face, and you can end up with a lot of people who are angry at you or who decide they don't want to follow your feeds anymore because they don't like what you said or whatever it is. So going viral is just like that extra little, it's like the sprinkles on a birthday cupcake. The birthday cupcake is really yummy, but if you get really yummy sprinkles on top of it, that's like a little something extra. That's basically what going viral is. It's the sprinkles on a cupcake. It's that little something extra that you didn't think you were going to get, but man, it really tastes good when you get it. And for the record, there are many, many, many more people who have never had anything go viral than there are people that have. It's not as easy as people want you to think it is. And I think if you try to force it, you're just going to end up making a mess, honestly. So what makes content good? What makes content stuff that potentially would go viral? Honesty. Don't try to be what you're not. Don't say things that you don't believe. Don't imply your business can do things it can't do. Just be honest. Just be you, whoever you is. And people will tell me, well, I don't have the personality for social media. Well, I don't, it's not, I'm not good at it. I don't feel comfortable with it. So go with that. Be who you are. And I'm sorry I keep drinking, but the other half of this is my throat is not behaving either. So we will persevere. What makes content good? Interesting. Yeah, obviously. If you're posting, like I said, if you're posting the same picture of a shirt and we do shirts, $2.99 a shirt or whatever the price is, if it was ever interesting, it loses its interest value pretty quickly. You want to post things that capture people's attention. You want to post things that people can identify with. You want to post things that people can learn from. You want to post things that make people sad or happy or, maybe angry, though I wouldn't go with angry too much because that can backfire on you a lot. You want your social media content to be interactive. That means you post questions. That means you post things that people can react to. Questions are a good one, and I really think people don't use questions properly or enough on social media, because questions will prompt interaction. Questions will prompt people to reply to you. But people either ask questions that are so boring or basic that nobody's ever going to really care about answering them, or questions that people have answered 5 million times. I find, and this is my personal opinion, and other people may say differently, the best way that I've ever used questions is to kind of talk about something that is either personal to me or something that I've discovered or identified with, and say, hey, have the rest of you seen the same thing? Or what do you think about this? or what's your opinion? And those seem to be the posts that get the most interaction and the most answers. That's just me, though. Be sincere. And sincerity and honesty are not necessarily the same thing, even though people conflate them a lot. But sincerity is just really, I am who I am, and I I mean this. I'm not just saying it because I think you'll like it. I'm not just saying it because I hope that you'll identify with it and like me and want to work with my business. This is what I really mean. Entertaining goes without saying, I think. You need to be entertaining. You need to keep people's attention. You need to be amusing. If you're not, then, like I said, people will move on to somebody who is. Now, that doesn't mean clowns and jugglers and sparklers and confetti cannons, though those things are all fun, except for maybe clowns. But it does mean try to be funny, or try to tell a story, or try to show something that maybe people don't get to see. Surprisingly enough, people who do videos of their equipment working can be captivating to people who don't get to see that all the time. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. And inspiring is another good thing to try to be. Again, that's not one you can force. And it does not mean, I should say this in like capital letters and with sparklers around it, it does not mean posting an inspirational quote every day. That used to be a good plan, but now every friggin' buddy does it. And it's really kind of to the point where I see them in my feed and I scroll by them most of the time because there's so many people doing it that it's kind of lost any sense of not being ordinary now, I guess is how I want to say it. That's not really how I want to say it, but it's the only way I can think of at the moment. So, some ways that you can shoot yourself in the foot, which I don't recommend because it hurts and it's not good. Automate and ignore. Now, I will say I used to be virulently, however one pronounces that, anti-automation. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was horrible. I thought you should never do it. I'd seen too many people get tripped up by it. I have somewhat changed my stance, partly because I now manage a lot more groups and pages, and sometimes I can't do everything in the moment. So as it says here on this slide, automating some of the functions can be useful. I don't recommend automating everything, and I don't recommend automating too far out. My opinion, and this is just my opinion, is that you probably shouldn't automate more than a week or two at most out. I personally probably wouldn't automate more than a week. Generally, when I use automation, it's I know I have a post coming up, and so I'll automate it, or I know there's a holiday coming up or something, so I'll do a post to make sure that I hit the holiday or whatever it is. I do still agree with the second point here on this slide. Automating all the functions is a recipe for disaster. If you're treating it like a Ron Popeil situation where you're just going to set it and forget it, and yes, I realize I just stated myself because people who are young probably have no idea who Ron Popeil is. But if you're just doing a set it and forget it, where you throw everything in the system and then you walk away, recipe for disaster. Because the post that looks completely innocuous when you made it up 2 months ago could turn out to be horribly bad when it finally goes live. And there have been some very big companies who have been caught with posts like that, where they said something really that seemed pretty innocuous at the time. And in the meantime, between when they created the post and when the post went live, a disaster happened or something. And their particular post now looked like they were being either making fun of somebody's pain or being callous or whatever it was. And it was not a good thing. So let's move on. This is a big pet peeve for me. We were talking about this earlier. Different messages for different sites. Twitter is different than Facebook, is different than LinkedIn, is different than Pinterest, is different than Instagram, and Google Plus was a thing back then. It's not really anymore. But substitute TikTok for Google Plus and you get the idea. And we could go through, I mean, Twitter is words. They have the option to do pictures and video, but honestly, the best way to have a Twitter feed work is just to have it be little short messages. Though Elon Musk may change that now, who knows? Facebook is words and pictures or video. I think that's probably the place where pictures and video, or pictures and words, or words and video marry the best. That's my opinion. Other people may feel differently. LinkedIn is much more business oriented. It again is pictures and words, probably more words. I see more essay type stuff on LinkedIn than I do anywhere else. Pinterest is all pictures, very few words. Descriptions for items in the pictures are very short. I think of Pinterest as being aspirational in that you want pictures of stuff that people are going to want and that they will save to their boards and hopefully come back and buy later. Instagram is totally pictures and hashtags. And you have to have really, I think you have to have really good photography to do well on Instagram. That's just me. And if we're talking about TikTok, TikTok is short videos. I once was of the opinion that TikTok was a fad. I am coming around to think not so much anymore because it has some longevity now. So, and there are some people who are doing quite well doing TikTok videos. So there you go. Flood the feed. This is a great way to shoot yourself in the foot. And by flooding the feed, I mean you post 5, 10, 15, 20 posts at the same time. And a lot of people do this who have the sales mentality. So it's like, look, we saw mugs. Look, we saw caps. Look, we saw shirts. Look, we saw blankets. Look, we saw scarves. Look, 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 we have all this stuff. And what happens is people tune out because they can't take in the volume. If all the posts are basically the same, which they usually are, maybe just the picture's different and a little bit of the wording, then they read one and they go, I don't care. It's not worth it to me. So what happens is you end up just really annoying people, and you end up negating the message that you're trying to send out because you've just flooded the feed with so much content all at once. The other thing that isn't great about this is when you flooded the feed, then you've blown all your content for future posts. So don't do it. I'd say one post at a time, honestly. That's how I do it. One post and give it time to breathe. And by breathe, I mean one post and give people time to see it, give people time to find it, give people time to think about it, comment on it. I tend to do nowadays, and this isn't always, but it's my rule of thumb. I usually like to I like to do like one post a day. That's a well curated, good content post. And then I leave it there and I see. And then maybe I'll do one the next day, or maybe it's 2 days. It depends. But I don't ever flood the feed. I'm not ever going to hit the group or the page or the profile with 5 posts in a row because it doesn't do what you think it will do. What you think it will do is capture people's attention. What it actually does is make people go away because they don't want to be bombarded. And this last point, I think, is something that we all need to remember. One post that is well thought out is worth far more than a dozen scattershot posts because there is time to post. And this is something I wish everybody who does social media for business would write in their notebook or write on their wall or whatever they need to do. One well thought out post is going to get you a lot more than a bunch of quickly thrown together things that you put up in a frenzy because you have the time to do it. That's just reality. I'm sorry, it is. So this is another thing that I see people do a lot, and I'm sorry I have to keep stopping to drink, but my voice just is not cooperating today. This is when you're on one platform, and I see this a lot on Facebook or a lot on Twitter, where you've caught somebody's attention on one particular platform, and you try to send them somewhere else. So you'll say, you're on Twitter and you say, hey, blah, 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 go see my post on Facebook. And I have the dang blinds closed and the sun is still getting in my face. What is with this world right now? Anyway, so this has just been a day. Let's put it that way. But if you've caught somebody's attention on a particular platform, don't send them somewhere else, because what will happen is either they won't go, or they'll go and they'll be confronted with a whole new bunch of stuff and you'll lose their attention. If you have, because really, honestly, what we're doing on social media, let's be blunt about this, we're trying to capture people's attention. That's the capital that we have. And if we have that capital, don't waste it by sending people somewhere else. That doesn't make any sense. So if you are lucky enough to get somebody's attention, talk to them on the platform where you caught their attention. Don't send them somewhere else. Basic, I see people do it all the time. Business pages for business. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it's important. The business option often offers analytics and other tools that a personal account won't offer, which is why I think business pages are so important. And more information means better posts and better response. There also is a perception, and some actual platforms now will not even allow you to have a personal profile that represents a business. You have to have a business page if it's a business, which is, I think, what it should be. But the reason for that is, number one, they want to sell you ads. Let's not lie. They're hoping to make money off you. And ads on social media, depending on the platform, can actually be a good bargain. When I was at Enmart years and years ago, not years and years, but years ago now, we used Facebook quite often, and we did quite well with Facebook ads, and it was surprisingly affordable. So having a business page and having the option to do ads and to boost posts and things like that is not a bad thing. It can be useful. The caveat I will put on that is, if you're going to do that sort of stuff, make sure you are paying attention to your budget. Don't go overboard. Don't get so excited about it that you just spend a ton of money and you don't know why you're spending it or what's happening with it, which can happen to people. The days of budgets getting blown, it used to happen a lot with Google AdWords back in the day, where people would set a budget and they would end up spending way more than they had planned because they weren't paying attention. So do make sure that you're always paying attention. What are you getting charged per click? How is your budget being allocated? Are they following the guidelines that you set up for what sort of market you want? All that kind of stuff. But business pages will, especially the Facebook, I mean, say what you will about Meta, and I am not a huge fan, but the Meta pages have some things that are actually very useful in the way of analytics, in the way of setting up ads, in the way of tracking ads, all that kind of stuff. So there are some useful things there. This is another mistake that I see people make, and we talked about this one a little bit earlier too. And that is, I want everybody to be my friend. I will accept any friend request I get. I don't care who they are. And I'm going to ask my neighbors and my mom and my uncle and my grandma and my sister and everybody else to like my page or like whatever it is, because I just want numbers, because the platforms are telling me that numbers are where it's at. And as I said earlier, my stance on this has changed somewhat. Numbers do matter a little more than they used to, because they do factor into what a social media platform thinks of your social capital. And social capital is basically how reputable you are, how much influence you have, that kind of thing. It's like a Q score for TV, basically. And so if you have a bigger fan base, that can help increase your social capital. So you do want to have a decent amount of friends. But I still don't think you should friend indiscriminately. And I still don't think you should ask people to friend you or follow you or be your fan if there isn't a reason for it. So I still stand by what I said here. Friend people who advance your goals. Think quality over quantity, although quantity should have a little more bearing than it used to. And being everyone's friend is nice, but it's not useful. So if you want to be everyone's friend, and I'm going to lean forward a little bit because that sun is driving me nuts. And if you want to be everyone's friend, do it in your personal page and then friend everybody you want. Go crazy because that doesn't matter. But when you are friending or liking or collecting fans for business purposes, you want to do it in such a way that the people you end up with in your fan or friend base are people who are going to want to buy from you, or people who are good connections, or people who you can learn from. It could be any of those goals or any of those reasons, but you need to give some thought to who you're letting into your clubhouse and who you're not. And if that sounds exclusionary, it's business. You're doing this for a reason, a strategic reason. And that doesn't mean that if you don't friend or like somebody's page or whatever, that you don't like them, that you're being mean. It just means that they don't serve the goals that you are pursuing for your business. There's nothing wrong with that. The components of an effective social media feed. This could go on for about a year, and I'm not even really going to try to tell you should have this or this or this. So these are the 2 points that I really want you to take away from this. Remember that what's effective for your audience or business may not be effective for a different business and vice versa. And the only way to know what works for you is by testing, paying attention, and asking your audience. And asking your audience is something that people neglect a lot. You can do polls. You can just ask a question. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you guys think? And if you try that, more times than not, people will reply to you. Social media is a great source of corporate intelligence. And I think a lot of people don't get that. The information is out there. You can ask people. You can go look at what your competitors are doing, and you don't have to be like an industrial spy or anything. You can just go look at their page. So doing all those things makes a difference. A good social media profile reflects your business. Your business is unique. Your social media account should show that. And one mistake that people make sometimes is that they will assume that because such and such thing was successful, that that's what they should do too. And that is totally not true. You don't have to look like everybody else. You should look like yourself. That's what's important. So make sure that your social media profiles reflect who you are and who your business is. And if you think you're boring, or if you think people won't be interested, or whatever it is, you're probably wrong, number one. And number two, it doesn't matter. If that's who you are, if this is who you are in the world, then that's who you should be on social media. Has variety. Don't post the same things all the time. Change things up. And don't post at the same time every day. Vary your posting times. Again, not rocket science. None of this stuff is rocket science, honestly. It's pretty basic. I'm just pointing it out to you. And hopefully it'll help some of you and maybe make you think of something you hadn't thought about before. And are you paying attention? Set it and forget it is not a good strategy. Even if you automate, adjustments may need to be made. Monitoring is key. So pay attention. That means go back and look at what you had set up to post. Pay attention after you post. Who's reacting? What are they saying? What gets the best reaction? What is getting the worst reaction? Any of that. All of those are good questions. And good social media builds community. And building a community takes time, but creating a community also builds trust. And like I said, none of this is rocket science, but social media has a lot of things that can do good things for you. Building a community is one of them. Having a group, being able to talk to people who are united around a single purpose or who have come to join a group that's about your business. That's huge. But if you're going to build a good community, it's going to take time. And it's going to take you building trust with the people in your community. And again, time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Be prepared to work at it for a reasonable amount of time. Because, and I feel like I'm hitting some of these points over and over, but honestly, these are things that I see people failing at that it hurts me a little bit that they're failing at them because I don't think it should be that way. So I'm trying to kind of pound the nails as hard as I can to get these points across to people. Don't believe those who say there is only one way to succeed. You have to find your own way, and that's where testing and monitoring comes in. You try things, you find out what works, and you find out what doesn't. Your social media profiles are as unique as you are, as unique as your business is. Embrace that. And that would be where this all ends. And honestly, between the sun and the nosebleed, I'm kind of glad I'm ending a little early today. I do apologize for the tissue in my nose and the sun getting in my way, which I'm not really sure how to get around that, but I'm going to figure it out eventually, or it'll move. That's how sun usually works. But anyway, thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you watching. One of these days, I'm not going to be a hot mess when we do one of these. It hasn't happened lately, but I'm optimistic. So I hope you come back next week because maybe next week will be the week. Thank you, everybody. I will see you next week. And have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you have a lovely holiday and you eat lots of turkey and have lots of fun. And I hope that your Black Friday sales are exactly what you want them to be. And I will talk to you all next week.